Hello, and welcome back to yet another retro channel. Today is part 2B of the epic Commodore 64 repair-a-thon, and we're going to get back to working on machine number 2, which was giving us so many issues in the first part. Before we get to that, though, I do have something I want to say. You folks have been incredibly generous with your time and your knowledge and your compliments and even your criticism. And I really, really appreciate that. When I started this not quite 2 months ago, I did not expect to get the kind of engagement that I've been getting from you guys. I figured I was a tiny, tiny fish in a very, very large pond of a lot of very talented and very skilled people who have already been doing this for a long time. A lot of the folks in the retro YouTube community have been doing this for 5, 7, 9 years. So I really figured that no one would notice. I was just doing it for fun. But you folks have stepped up, and I have been really loving the level of engagement that you have been sharing with me, both in subscribing to the channel, um, leaving comments, liking the videos. You've really stepped up, and I am both humbled and extremely grateful for what you've done for me over these past few weeks. So I hope you keep doing it. I hope I keep giving you content that you think is worth doing it for. And well, that's really all I have to say about that. I do have one other small housekeeping issue. I know in my introductory video, I did say that I'm not doing this for money. And to this day, that's still true. I am not doing this to make money, to make a living or anything like that. However, because as many of you will realize, this hobby isn't the cheapest thing that I could have picked up. In an effort to make sure that I have quality content for you guys, I have gone ahead and opened a small Patreon account. So if you want to, and again, this is completely voluntary. The videos are still going to be released publicly every Wednesday and Saturday as long as I can keep doing it. There's never going to be a charge to watch my videos. But if you're feeling generous and if you feel like helping me provide content for you, like I said, I've opened a small Patreon account, but there's a $1, a $2, and a $3 level. The $1 is simple support. Your name would show up in the scroller at the end of the videos. $2 level, you get early access to the videos. I usually post the videos a day or two before they're released publicly. So if you join at the $2 level, you'll get an email with a link to watch the videos a little early. And at the $3 level, and again, this is a level that I'm not sure you really want to use, but it's there if you do. You get the same benefits as level 1, level 2, plus if I do any live streams, you would be invited to join those as my patron. And again, like I said, there's going to be no change. You can continue to watch the videos just like you're doing right now without giving me a dime. And I'm perfectly happy to keep producing them and being paid by engagement with the community. So if I do get folks joining as patrons, that money will go to helping me purchase machines to work on, helping me purchase supplies, spare parts, and lab equipment or recording equipment, so that I can continue to do this and try to do it in as high a quality manner as possible. So that being said, that's all I have to say. I'm not going to hawk you every week for the Patreon account. That's the only time I'm going to mention it on the channel. The link will always be in the description below the video, but that's the last you're going to hear from me on it. So that being said, it's time we get back to machine number 2 and see what we can do about getting her all up and running. Thank you very much. Well, folks, an odd thing has happened, and I'm not sure exactly how to explain it. While I continued to probe signals, looking for possible problem with the decoding logic for memory to figure out why, after I replaced two of the memory ICs, that dead tests had started flashing again for one of the chips that I'd already replaced. As I was doing the probing, dead test suddenly got past that the flashing and actually started to run. So here is what happens when I run dead test now. Dead test starts up and it actually runs through, or at least it was. We'll see what happens this time. So there, as you can see, it ran through the entire dead test cycle and didn't show anything as bad. Now, I don't think that can actually be the case. Chips don't suddenly start working again. So what I did, I pulled dead test and put in the regular diagnostic cartridge. And it runs to a point. It'll be stuck here. It always shows U22 as bad. It alternates between showing U9 and U11 or U10 and U12 as bad. And you can see the incorrect characters on the screen. So I believe the memory is still an issue. And I think what I need to just go ahead and do is pull the remaining RAM ICs and replace them with new ones. Socket them and replace them with new ones and see if I get any better response there. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to replace all the RAM, and then we'll come back and we'll see where we are. Okay, so through the magic of editing, we now have all of the MT RAM removed, sockets installed, and new 4164 RAM installed in all 8 positions. So what we need to do now is test it. So we'll connect back up to video and power and see what we get. Still not good. Okay. So now at least we have a baseline. RAM test 1 bad, RAM test 2 actually moving a little farther this time. What happens when it cycles through. Yeah, screen RAM bad, RAM test 1 bad. RAM test 2. Okay. All right. Let me try real quick the other version of the diagnostic. See what that shows. Is it frozen on RAM test 2 this time? Yeah, I'd say it's frozen on RAM test 2. So, all things being equal, if these RAM are good, as I believe they are, although my only testing was in this little crappy tester that I don't 100% trust, but all the RAM that I put in passed in this. We've got to have something going on in the logic. Now, we do still have another MOS chip here that could be suspect. This is a MOS 7709. It's in U14's position. Okay, so that MOS chip is actually a replacement for a 74LS258, which is also a quad 2 input multiplexer, just like the 257 is, only it's an inverted version. And this seems to have to do with multiplexing the addressing from the VIC2 to talk to RAM. And since we are getting problems with screen RAM, that actually seems like a good candidate for our next problem, both because it's dealing with screen RAM and because it is one of the infamous MOS logic chips that have a habit of failing. So I'm going to go ahead and remove and socket that chip. This one right here. Okay, a quick check of our suspect IC in the TLA66 programmer. It's a 74LS258 and test. Yep, that IC is not good. Again, not a surprise, it being a MOS IC. So let's go ahead and install a socket and a replacement part. New 74LS258. And another test. All right, let's see where we get this time. Here we go. This time it seems to be frozen on screen RAM. Oh. Still getting the bad characters. We're still getting bad back from some of the RAM chips, even though they've been replaced. This is fun. Well, I think I'm going to call it a night and come back to this with fresh eyes tomorrow. See, this time it got past the screen RAM test, but failed RAM test 1, passed RAM test 2. Yeah. Like I said, I think I'm going to take a break, get some sleep, and come at this with fresh eyes in the morning. We'll see you then. Okay, welcome back to machine number 2. Now, you may notice that a few things have changed since the last time, since the last video. But let's go ahead and recap where we were. So when we first booted this, attempted to boot this machine with no cartridge installed, we got a gray screen. That was fixed by replacing the VIC-2 chip, the 6567 R8. The original chip was bad. This is a replacement. That cleared up the gray screen, but still left us with black screen and no dead test. The next thing we tracked down was the PLA, and I replaced the PLA with one of the GAL PLAs from Daniel Mantione. And Daniel, I apologize if you're watching this and I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm just a dumb, ugly American, and I get things wrong like that. So, but Daniel Mantione created these, and they're a good PLA replacement. So we did that. We tracked down, let's see, we found a bad MOS 74LS257, and then we tracked down, we had two RAM chips that were showing up as bad with the dead test. They were giving flash codes that indicated these two RAM chips were bad. The strange thing was that after I replaced both of these, the dead test went back to showing that the first one was bad again, which didn't make any sense because I did test the RAM chip in the little memory tester, little DRAM tester, and it showed up as good. And plus, they were new old stock; they weren't pulls, so there was no reason that RAM should have been bad. So we started looking for more problems, and we did identify a second MOS logic chip, which was a 74LS258. Actually, I think that might be, yeah, that was this one down here. Again, as we pulled each of these MOS chips, we tested them in the TL866 Mini Pro programmer, and they tested bad, so we put in sockets and replaced them. Now, that's where we kind of left off. It's been several days since the last time I recorded on this, and in the meantime, I did do some additional testing. I identified another MOS logic chip here, which is a 7708 MOS chip, I believe, which is the equivalent of a 74LS06. I pulled that and tested it in the Mini Pro, and again, it failed. So socket and a new chip. Tested again, and was still getting the same issue with the corrupted characters on the screen and the RAM showing up as bad. Continued to test and located a non-MOS chip, this one, which is 74LS139. Again, pulled it, tested bad, so replaced it, and tested again, and same issues. So I decided to go back to testing signals again, and what I found was that on the CPU, when testing address lines 13, 14, and 15, they were still showing as stuck high. So we've actually addressed almost every location on the board, or possibly even every location on the board where all those three address lines come together. So I decided to go back to the beginning. Obviously, we've replaced the VIC-2. The next thing we did was replace the PLA with a GAL PLA. If you'll remember, when we did that, I tested the defective PLA in the ZIF board, and I also tested the GAL PLA that I was going to install in this board in the ZIF board. In the first video, when I tested that, the first time I inserted it in the ZIF socket and turned it on, it failed. But then I reseated it and tried again, and it seemed to pass. Reseated it a third time and started it up, and again it passed. So I assumed the first failure was just an issue with seating in the ZIF socket. However, I decided to take a punt, and I pulled the GAL PLA that I had used as a replacement in here, and I have another gal PLA, and I put that in. And I started up dead test, and it ran through. None of the errors that we'd been seeing, none of the garbled characters, none of the RAM failing. It actually started to work. So, curious to know what was actually going on, I took the apparently defective PLA. Now, the ones I've been using are from kits that I ordered directly from Daniel. All I did was they came with the sockets, with the pin headers for the bottom, with the gals pre-programmed, and all I had to do was solder it together. So my soldering is involved in this. So that was actually the first thing I suspected, was that I had soldered them wrong, or soldered that one wrong. So the very first thing I did was, since I had a PLA that I knew was working, I took the two gals out of this one that was the defective one, and I put the gals from the other PLA in the sockets, and I tested, and it worked, which meant that my soldering was okay, and the problem was down to the gals. So to figure out which gal was the problem, I swapped them one at a time, and I determined that when I had the right gal from the defective unit and the left gal from the known good unit, it passed. So the problem was down to the left gal. I took the left gal, and to try to figure out what was wrong with it, I checked it in the Mini Pro. I verified it against the fuse map file that Daniel uses, and it verified. So the code inside the gal seems to be okay. So the next thing I did was, just to be on the safe side, I went ahead and erased the gal and reprogrammed it with Daniel's fuse map and tried it. Now, when I went to erase it and when I went to program it, each time the programmer gave me a pin error. However, when I did a retry, it erased. And when I did a retry on the right, it wrote. So I popped it back in the PLA, the gal PLA, and tested, and sure enough, it still failed. So what we had was a defective gal chip. Now, this is actually a known problem. My friend Lee, Captain Commodore, has gone through this, and he's done a video on it. I've seen a couple of other videos on a couple of other people's channels. I don't think I've watched any of them, but I've seen them, the title of the video indicating that other people have experienced this problem. These gal chips, the ones I got from Daniel, he supposedly, I trust him, he sourced them from a reliable source, either DigiKey or Mauser, or one of those, because he didn't trust AliExpress to give quality products. What I did to finally get this gal working is I had ordered a lot, actually 2 lots of gals. I ordered them from AliExpress, and I took one of those and I programmed it in the programmer and popped it in here, and now this PLA does work. So Daniel's design for the gal PLA is sound. It's a perfectly working solution. What you have to watch out for is defective gal chips. These are both, this is the one from Daniel. It's a Lattice Gal 20V8B that he got from a reliable, reputable source. And this is another Lattice, supposedly at least, Lattice Gal 20V8B that I got from AliExpress. So I think if you run into an unreliable gal PLA, your problem is probably with one of the gal chips. Again, Daniel's design is absolutely sound. As long as the gals aren't defective, you get a good PLA replacement. So that being said, now we have a good PLA in. Let's go ahead and take a look at dead test. Okay, there you go. The SID is sounding just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it for the rest of this testing. And we're going to take out the dead test and switch over to the regular diagnostics. And we're going to retest our voltages. If you remember right, on the first video, we tested our voltages and we were getting pretty low voltages on the 5-volt rail coming from the power supply. Now, the power supply is providing at the moment 5.06 volts according to the meter on the power supply itself. So again, just because I want to cover my bases, I'm going to go ahead and test the 2 voltage regulators, make sure they're still providing the good voltages that they were on the first video. We've got, oh, turn it on. We have 4.95, which is great, and 12.21, which is also great. Now, where we started seeing problems is when I checked at the CPU. And we're still seeing low voltage. That's not good. We've still got a problem somewhere on the board. 4.66 is not good voltage. Yeah. So I'm actually going to go ahead and hook up the harness for the diagnostics cartridge. So maybe we can see something going on there. Okay. Diagnostics harness installed. Let me switch back over to the output screen. Let's see what we get. That's actually a clean result. Since we don't have the SID in, we won't see good on the 6581 or on the control port because the SID handles the paddles. So that's actually a good response from the diagnostics. So why are we still getting low voltage? Okay. It's time to do what I probably should have done in the first place, and that is check the power switch. Voltage at the power switch, 4.25. That doesn't look good. Let's see what we're getting over here again. 3, 4, 5, 6. 4.76. I think we may have a problem with the power switch. Let me check resistance. I'm showing only 0.1 of an ohm. Those resistance levels look good on the switch, but I don't know. Do we have a problem with the power jack? And why does the voltage go up after the switch? Okay, folks, so what I've done is I tested the switch. The switch wasn't showing any unusual resistance, so I decided to go ahead and check the power connector. I wasn't reading any unusual resistance, but what I did is I took trusty Deoxit D5 and I sprayed into the power socket and inserted and removed the power jack quite a few times. And after doing that, take a look at what we're getting on the CPU power. 4.81 volts. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but it's much better than it was, and I will accept that. So we're good to go. Let's go ahead and switch back over to the output and take a look at the dead test, and I have put the SID back in, so we should get SID sound. All right, that is a working C64. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the diagnostic harness and the diagnostic cartridge. Put away the dead test. Now, there is one more thing that I want to do to this, and I did it to the first machine, but I forgot to mention it and forgot to record it. The video out of the Commodore 64 can have some issues. Let's take a look. We should get the basic screen this time. Okay, so you'll see, well, actually it's pretty fuzzy video. Looks like we need some recapping done to this board because we're getting some noise. But if you look through the noise, you can see that there is a sort of soft, this is composite video, by the way. There's a sort of softness to the edges of the characters. And also there is what you would call color fringing, where at the borders between colors, you can see the colors kind of move into the, at the edge of the light blue where it goes into the dark blue, you can see that the light blue kind of bleeds into the dark blue space. There are a lot of solutions for these problems that are out there, but I think the one that I like to use is one that was championed by Mr. Adrian Black. He put a video out on this, and the way you do it with this particular RF modulator is you have to lift the legs on two capacitors. Those are on the input of chrominance and luminance, I believe. And what they're doing, according to Adrian, is they're creating a low-pass filter. So they're filtering out some of the high-frequency information in the signals. That is what makes the text a little softer. And then there's an inductor right down here. There's an inductor down here that you need to either cut out or jump across. When you do that, that helps with the color fringing, because what that ends up doing is slowing down the signal, so that things don't happen at the right, things don't happen aligned correctly, and the chrominance will bleed out. So what he does is he clips the two capacitors, he clips out the inductor and bridges across the inductor, and then one thing he does that I don't do is he goes ahead and connects the composite video signal to the RF output, so you have a composite out instead of an RF. I leave it RF. You can obviously get the composite out through the video jack, so I don't see the point in making that connection. But clipping the two capacitors and clipping and bridging across the inductor, those I will do. So we'll go ahead, and I need to get some diagrams so I can see what I'm doing here. Okay, I have to apologize here. I forgot to turn my microphone back on, so what you're hearing is me from the future. And what I'm pointing out are the two capacitors that need to be clipped. What we're going to do is clip a single leg on each one and lift them up so they no longer make contact. That's going to disconnect them from ground so that they no longer act as low-pass filters. Just use a pair of diagonal cutters and get in there and snip the capacitor, clip the leg of the capacitor and pull it away, and then do the same thing with the other one. I'm going to have a little trouble getting in here, but once I finally make it. Sorry for blocking your view, but I was, like I said, having a little trouble getting in there. Okay, that's the second capacitor clipped. Just making sure that the contacts are no longer making contact. And the next thing we need to do is clip away the inductor. The inductor we're clipping is being hidden by this transistor, but it's this little blue guy right here. We're going to clip both legs of it as close to the inductor as possible to leave some of the legs intact so that we can then bridge across it with, I'm going to use a little trimming from a resistor or capacitor, something that I've soldered into a board at some point and trimmed the leg. So just get in here with the diagonal cutters again. Clip both legs. Again, as close to the inductor as possible. Sorry for blocking your view there. And then a little pair of tweezers will let me remove that part. And that's the inductor we've taken out. And now we just need to solder in a bridge across the two remaining legs. So we're going to tin them first, and we'll also tin the bit of leg that we're going to use. I want to try to get this white wire out of the way so that I don't melt it with the soldering iron when I try to get in there. This very tight space. Apologies for the autofocus. It's a little aggressive sometimes. So I'm tinning the remaining legs. And we take as I said, a leg from a resistor or capacitor that I've soldered into a board previously, a little piece of one, and we're going to tin it and then hold it in place with the tweezer and just tack it down with the soldering iron. And bring the other end in contact with the other leg and tack that down. I'll trim off the excess so that we don't make any contact that we don't want to make. And then I will verify that connection with the multimeter in continuity mode. And I know you won't be able to hear it, but there is a beep. Beep. Good. So the modification is complete, and now we can take a look at what that looks like on the screen, and we'll give you a little comparison between old and new. As you can see on the left side, that is the improved video, and it looks a little crisper, a little brighter than the before video on the right hand side. Okay, so I was getting ready to do some final testing on the number 2 machine here, and it looks like we have a problem with the SID chip. Sometimes when I boot with the SID installed, the original SID installed, sometimes I get a black screen, sometimes it'll boot. I don't know what it's going to do this time. It might go into the I have the diagnostic cartridge in. It might go into the diagnostic, but even if it does go into the diagnostic, you'll hear that there's a pretty strong popping when it changes its volume. Now it's supposed to have a little bit of a pop, but not this much. And you'll also hear that the noise channel, the 4th channel of audio, doesn't play at all. So here, let's see what we get. See if we get a black screen or if we get the diagnostics. Well, we're getting the diagnostics, so we'll let it run through. Let you hear what it does. Now remember, I don't have the diagnostic harness installed, so you're going to see a lot of bad. You'll see the 6526s report bad, the keyboard, serial, several things will report bad simply because the harness isn't installed. Cassette control port, serial port, user port, keyboard is open. Yeah, 6526s show bad, and the 6581 does show bad, but that's probably because of the lack of the harness. But there, you should be hearing the noise channel. It's not there. So the SID is going bad and is going to have to be replaced. I'll go ahead and pull the original SID out. We will mark it bad or marginal. We'll add an M. It may be good for testing purposes at some point, but it's not going to be good as a full-time chip. Then we will grab one of the ARM SIDs I have in stock. These are a very good, not perfect, but very good replacement SID. They do a pretty good job of replicating the SID sound. They are, I think, better than the Swin SID or Nano Swin SID. I haven't tried back SID. I haven't tried a lot of the SID replacements, but of the ones I have heard, the ARM SID seems to me to be the best. And let's see what we get here. Okay, back into the diagnostics. That delay is my video capture device, the Elgato. It takes it a moment to sync up. I actually see the display on my little monitor before I see it in the capture window. Okay, so that's a working SID. Now we're going to do, as I said, the final testing that I neglected to do. So first we're going to pop in Easy Flash here. And we are going to run Adrian's favorite test song to make sure that sounds all right. sounding pretty good, so let's give that a little play. I'm not very good at Donkey Kong, so. Oh, well, that seems to be working. All right, now, when I was doing my EEPROM PLA video and the subsequent OOPS video, you'll recall that I tested with Super Zaxxon that I have stored on the Easy Flash cartridge. That is, I was told, quite rightly so, not a good test of the PLA replacement because that version doesn't try to do the 12K bank switching that the original cartridge did. I have since purchased this, which is supposed to be a replica of the original Super Zaxxon that actually still uses the 12K bank switching. So I'm told this is supposed to be as much of a test of the PLA as the original cartridge is. I could be wrong about that. I could have been told wrong. If that's the case, please let me know. But as far as I know, this should try the 12K bank switching, and it should be a good test of the PLA. So we're going to pop this in here and see what we get. Okay, working so far. Looks like we're working without issues, so I can only assume, like I said, that that means that this PLA is functioning. Again, if I'm wrong about the this cartridge being a faithful replica of the original, you can let me know. But it looks like that's working well. So we'll assume this machine is functioning now, and that added another about $40 after taxes and shipping to our cost of repair to replace with this arm SID. So we're probably at about $120 now worth of replacement parts that had to go into this machine to get it working. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some heat sinks to some of the chips that run hotter. The VIC-2 already is heat sinked by this shield. When I replaced it, I did put the thermal paste back on the tab that connects to the VIC-2, so that should be getting a good heat sink from that. I don't need to heat sink the GAL PLA. It runs way cooler than the original, and the new arm SID also runs cool, so I don't need to worry about heat sinking that. But I do want to put heat sinks on the CPU, the two CIAs, the ROMs, using some of these things and fixing the diagrams of the IC ROMs. And those should help extend the life of this C64 we've just brought back to life. Additional things I could do, I could recap the board, but these look like they've been recapped at some point. These don't look like the original parts. So I think we're probably good on caps. I'm not seeing too much interference in the video signal. As you saw, we did make the mods to the RF modulator to increase the sharpness and decrease the color smearing, which mostly you would notice on an S-video output. I don't have an S-video cable for this one. But that should be all we need to do for this Commodore 64, at least electronically. Now, the keyboard does still need a restoration before I can put it back together, and the case needs a little more cleanup. If you remember, this was the one with the silver label case. Now, obviously, this isn't a silver label PCB motherboard because it has both the 8-pin video connector and the you can see it, the round cutout for the power. The original silver labels would have had the square and would have had only a 5-pin connector for the video. So it is a Frankenstein machine, but I have a little more work to do on that case to clean it up. And like I said, the keyboard needs restored, and then this will be a completely restored C64 and ready to go to a new owner to love and cherish. That will do it for machine number 2 in our epic C64 repair-a-thon. I apologize for this video being a bit disjointed. A combination of me being a little under the weather this week, plus some technical issues, plus, of course, the difficulty of this machine itself. It was hard to get it to be a coherent video, but I did my best, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give it a like. If not, you know what to do there too. If you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Ring the notification bell so that you get a notification when I release these videos. And in the meantime, everybody stay safe, be well, and we'll see you next time. Bye.